Welcome, my friends, to the very first brand deep dive of 2025, and this one has been highly requested. Today, we're going to be discussing everything that there is to know about the Row. Now, if you're new to my channel, you may not know this, but I actually have this series called The Truth About Series, where we take a deep dive into the secret world of some of the most exclusive luxury brands, and we discuss everything that there is to know about them, from their heritage and history all the way to their current lineup. And I cannot help myself. I have to share with you my very honest thoughts on what pieces are worth your hard-earned money and which ones to skip, in my opinion at least. And today we're going to be discussing the Row, which is a brand that I have quite a bit of history with. Now, I don't want to say that I have been a customer of the Row for many years, because that kind of implies that I have been buying their pieces left and right, which is not the case. But let me put it this way, it is a brand that has been on my radar for many years at this point. It is one of the first luxury brands that I ever invested in, and I remember I used to live really close to Barney's downtown in Chelsea, and I would stop by their dedicated Row corner every now and again. In fact, I think I should still have some pictures on my phone of some of their pieces that they used to do back in the day. I used to take all my pictures in black and white back then. I felt very artsy doing that. So if I still have some of those pictures, I'll make sure to include those in today's video. I was also invited to the launch of their menswear collection, their very first menswear collection, back in, I think it was 2017 or 2018. They did a little shopping event at their store on 71st Street, which was a great experience. I had first dibs on their first menswear collection. So it is a brand that I know quite a bit about, and I'm really excited to share with you everything that you should know about the Row and what pieces to look into if it's a brand that has piqued your interest. So if you'd like to find out everything that there is to know about the Row, then make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet, and keep on marching. I feel like it was really in the past couple of years that the Row has become so widely known and often discussed, largely because of this movement and trend of quiet luxury. But little known fact, the Row has actually been around since 2006. It's an American brand that was founded by twin sisters Mary-Kate and Ashley. Now, as someone who was born in the mid-90s, I actually grew up on the Olsen twins TV shows and movies. In fact, I remember their autobiography being the very first book I ever read on my own. Not something that was read to me, but something that I actually read by myself. So it's quite interesting how my life has been intertwined with the Olsen twins for decades at this point. And funny enough, I think I just talked about this in my last video, but my very first signature scent was also by the Olsen twins. Before the Row, they had a beauty brand called Elizabeth and James, and they had two fragrances. Both of them were different play on words around Nirvana, if I remember correctly. And they had one inspired by bourbon vanilla, which was my signature scent for many years. I remember as if it was yesterday coming across that scent at Sephora, and I wore that fragrance for a couple of years until it was sadly discontinued. But needless to say that the Olsen twins have always had a strong appreciation for design and the finer things in life, which is what really inspired them to create their very own fashion line, even if it didn't start out like one. Even before the Row was ever an idea, the twins were kind of renowned for their personal style. It's something that they always had a lot of love and appreciation for. They had these incredible wardrobes filled with some of the most exquisite designer pieces. They were big fans of Yohji Yamamoto, Phoebe Philo while she was at Celine, and also Hermes. So it's no surprise that a lot of their current pieces were actually inspired by their very own collection. But let's talk about how the Row actually started, because it did not start out I don't think the Olsen twins knew that eventually their brand would turn into an empire and such an iconic house, because they actually had quite, I don't want to use the word humble, but it kind of started out as a passion project when the twins set out to create the perfect white t-shirt. They had these incredible wardrobes filled with the finest luxury pieces, but the one thing they struggled to find was a great, simple, core building block piece, which would have been a white t-shirt, one that would effortlessly complement every other designer piece in their arsenal. And as they worked on perfecting this design, they actually came to realize that there were very few brands focusing on this gap in the market, basically creating core essential for those whose wardrobes were predominantly made up of luxury pieces like themselves, and thus the role was born. They were basically looking to create core foundation pieces for those who appreciate luxury, for those customers who do not mind spending a lot of money on basics, but basics that are made from the finest materials and that are crafted with as much attention to detail as a gown or an haute couture piece would be, which are, of course, art pieces in their own right, but they are not pieces that most people wear on a regular basis, whereas a white t-shirt is something that you reach for. And if it's something that you wear a lot, why would you not want it to feel as luxurious as the other pieces that you already have in your collection? And that is how the role begun. That's how the idea of the role emerged. And as with any contemporary brand, they've gone through several stages of evolution. If you look at their early designs, you'll definitely notice that their pieces used to be a lot more feminine, ornate, and even colorful. I feel like the role back in the day was known for their really rich and over the top use of furs, feathers, and some of the most over the top exotic leathers. They used a lot of ostrich, a lot of lizard, alligator, and crocodile, not only on their bags, but also on their pieces of ready to wear. I think some of the most memorable pieces that I recall from the road, they did this incredible python leather jacket. They had these floor length jackets made of ostrich. They had incredible fur creations. So they were definitely not quite as stripped down back then as they are today, which I think, things change. We evolve not only as people, but alongside with that, our aesthetic changes. So it makes perfect sense for the role to also take their time with figuring out who they are and what they want to bring to the world of fashion. And while it did take them a few years,
and the Women's Wear Designer of the Year is Ashley Olsen and Mary Kate Olsen for the row.
In 2015, the role was actually named Women's Wear Designer of the Year by the CFDA, the Council of Fashion Designers of America, which definitely solidified their place in not only the fashion scene, but mainly in luxury fashion. And they quickly became one of the most loved and most respected American fashion house, contemporary American fashion house, I should say. And even though they have gone through all these changes, the one thing that remained unchanged is their laser focus on quality, sophistication, and timeless designs that really transcend trends, because the role might start trends, but they don't chase and follow them. And we will talk about some of their most trendy pieces at this point that they are single-handedly responsible for starting. There'll be no surprise there. Of course, we'll be talking about the Margot bag, which is not actually as original as you think it is, yet it has a dupe by every luxury brand and high street brand at this point. But they are not necessarily against trends, but they definitely don't chase them. In fact, they encourage their customers to invest in quality pieces that will last a lifetime instead of spending a lot of money on things that you only feel comfortable wearing for a single season or two. It's something that the twins themselves also talked about, that they go through phases, which is definitely something I can identify with. If you've been with me for a while, you know that I always talk about my different phases. When I find something that I really enjoy, I wear it over and over and over again until I get tired of it, and sometimes that takes a couple of months. Other times that might take a few years, and the twins have that very same approach to fashion. They are definitely not against or embarrassed by re-wearing the same things over and over again, and it's something that they encourage their own customers to do so, which makes perfect sense considering that the role strives for perfection. As we discussed, the idea of the role emerged from this sort of quest for creating the perfect white t-shirt, and ever since their beginning they have been striving for perfection. So if you put as much time and effort into crafting a single piece, you don't want them to be just thrown away or packed away after a season or two. And it really doesn't matter what the role does, whether it is a white t-shirt, a wool coat, a pair of trousers, or a leather handbag. Whatever the role decides to do, they always strive to do it to the best of their abilities, using the finest materials that are draped, tailored, and just cut to absolute perfection. And speaking of tailoring, you might be wondering, where does this name The Row come from? So the brand was actually named after Savile Row in London, an area known for its traditional bespoke tailoring, which really speaks to the Olsen sisters' unwavering commitment to craftsmanship and attention to details, and their love and appreciation for bespoke custom tailoring and the tradition and heritage of custom tailoring. It's something that they have a lot of love and appreciation for, which is of course also reflected in their pieces, because when we move on to what pieces to buy from the road, their tailoring pieces are definitely something that we'll have to discuss. And before we move into what to buy from the row, in my opinion at least, I lastly wanted to talk about their boutiques, because they actually have 5 boutiques around the world. Their very first boutique was in LA. I think in 2016 it was, they opened a boutique in New York on Madison Avenue on, I think it's on East 71st Street. And then they have a store in London. I believe that was their third boutique. They have a boutique in the Hamptons, and most recently they opened a boutique in Paris. Now, what makes their boutiques stand out and why I find the in-store experience quite special is because these boutiques don't really feel like a store. Obviously, you can buy pieces of clothing, shoes, accessories, and bags there, but believe it or not, when these boutiques first opened, well, let me start at the beginning. What do these stores look like? What's interesting about their boutiques is they're not really consistent in how they look. They don't have the exact same design. In fact, they respect the original architecture of where they are based and located. They don't really look like stores. They feel more like someone's home. When you go to one of the Rose boutiques, it almost feels like you're entering in to someone's home and you're just playing dress up in their personal wardrobe. They don't really feel like artificial stores. In fact, they feel more like someone's home, which creates almost an extension of the brand. Their stores tend to be quite welcoming, really homey, and they have incredible pieces on display, but they feel to me just a lot more cozy than a regular store would. And I'm not sure if that's still the case, but back in the day when their boutiques first opened, or when their boutique in New York first opened, what was quite interesting about it is that you could not only buy pieces by the row, but every single thing was handpicked by the Olsen twins to be put on displays. So the pieces of furniture, the art, the accessories, they were all things that were selected by the Olsen twins, and they were actually for sale. So you could go into a store looking for a dress and come out with a sofa or a piece of art, which definitely made the shopping experience a little bit more different. And they were basically selling the lifestyle, which is an ambiance that I can imagine the rich and famous who have been cult followers of the role for many years really easily got sucked into. This sort of ambiance of appreciation for art and design is something that is interwoven into everything that they do, including their in-store experience. But at this point, obviously, you can not only buy the row online, but they do have quite a wide distribution. As I mentioned before, the row had a dedicated section at Barney's when they were first around. They are, of course, also sold across different platforms and different department stores as well. But if you do get the chance, if you love the rose aesthetic, I would highly encourage you to stop by their stores. Even if you're not going to buy anything, even if you just have an appreciation for art and design, their stores are so beautifully designed and curated that I think you would have an amazing time just stopping by for a browse. As the role continues to evolve, the one thing that they remain laser focused on is creating understated pieces that look and feel expensive, not because they rely on heavy branding or over the top styling and accessorizing, but purely because of the care that goes into the selection of fabrics and materials, the meticulous tailoring, and the if you know, you know details. Two details that I would like to point out to you, because there's one thing for sure. The rose pieces can be quite subtle and understated, but if you know what to look for, some of their pieces you can spot from a mile away. Two of my favorite details are their spine detail, which is quite interesting. It's something that I think they were inspired by Rick Owens to do so. A lot of their pieces, especially their knits and their lighter t-shirts, will have a line running down the back right in the center, which is what I call the spine detail. It's something that I really do enjoy, and it's something that I have been a fan of from Rick Owens for many years. So as we discussed earlier, a lot of their pieces are inspired by their very own wardrobe, and they're not necessarily dupes or replicas of their own pieces, but more like updates or modernized versions of some of their most favorite pieces. In some cases, they perfected them and they made them more suitable to fit their own lifestyle. In others, they were just basically a tribute to these iconic pieces. Anyway, a lot of their knits will feature this spine detail, which is something that you can look out for, not to be confused with Rick Owens pieces. And then some of their pieces will also feature a little TR coin, which is as branded as pieces from the roll will get. So if you know what details to look for, you can find these little whispers of luxury on some of their pieces, but you will definitely not find a piece that screams and shouts the brand name row. And with that, let's move on to some of their most iconic pieces and what pieces, in my opinion, are worth your hard-earned money. And speaking of the spine detail, let's start with their knits, which I have a tremendous amount of appreciation for the rose knits. I do have several different pieces from the Rose Knitwear collection, but let's start with the piece that I would personally not invest in, even though it is one of the essential pieces by the row. This is something that has a cult following, which is the so-called Ophelia knit. This is part of their women's collection, but if you know me, you know that I really don't care about what department each piece belongs to. I buy whatever I like and whatever I personally think works with my proportions. To me, what's a lot more important than the label is whether or not it works for me and it works for my body shape. So it really doesn't matter. I would have no issues buying the Ophelia sweater if it was something that I was into, but I am in the minority here. It's really not something that I enjoy. In fact, I find it quite overwhelming on most people out there. The Ophelia sweater is this extremely oversized, heavy, chunky wool and cashmere blend sweater that, in my opinion, as I said, is just way too overbearing on most people out there. It does have a really simple crew neck and it can be recognized for a raised sort of neckline. It has these rib details not only around the neck but also around the hem. But what I really dislike about it is how raised and how chunky the neckline actually is. And I really don't like it because it runs extremely big. So it doesn't matter how many sizes you go down, it feels long, it feels chunky, and not in a flattering way, or at least not in my opinion. I know it's a cardinal sin to say this because the Row fans do love this sweater, and it is something that has been copied time and time again. In fact, dare I say, I think it was actually improved on by a recent dupe, which I can make sure to link down below for you if you're looking for a similar look for 1/10 of the price. That is something that you could look into. The Ophelia sweater is personally not my favorite. Instead, I would much rather invest in something like the Kensington turtleneck from the Row, which gives you a similar chunky look without going overboard. But if you're looking for a more simple sweater for this current season, they are doing one called the Hibem cashmere sweater, which is made of cashmere instead of a blend of wool and cashmere. So those are two things that I would definitely explore. When it comes to their knits for men, their Benji sweater tends to be quite popular, which is a really simple cashmere sweater. And when it comes to the styling these knits, you will often see the Row styling chunkier knits with high-waisted, tailored pleated pants, which I do adore. I feel like very few brands do pleated pants as exquisitely as the Row does. My favorite classic style for women is the Igor pants, which I don't personally own myself, but I would have no issues investing in one if I ever found it in a color and a size that suits me. Their trousers tend to be quite oversized, so that is just something for you to keep in mind. But I do love their Igor pants for women, which they do almost every single season in different finishes, colors, and fabrics. And then for men, I love their Marcello pants, which again is a classic that they'll bring back every season or every other season, which I am just a huge fan of. And if you're looking to invest your money into a classic timeless piece that you'll wear time and time again, their pleated pants are not something that you will be disappointed in. But speaking of disappointment, let's quickly talk about the Rose t-shirts, which is quite funny considering that their whole goal from the very beginning was to create the perfect basic t-shirt. Yet it's the one piece I don't think they have perfected just yet, at least not for the price. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with their basic t-shirts, but I just really don't think that they are worth the price, even though I have no issues spending a serious amount of money on a t-shirt. I really don't think that their t-shirts are just where they should be for the price, but there are two classic t-shirts that they do. They do the Luke t-shirt for men, and then they do a slightly shrunken design for women, which I believe is called the Wessler t-shirt. They come in, I think they do them in white, black, and navy, and maybe gray every single season. And there are some seasonal colors that they will introduce seasonally, obviously. But these are things that I really don't think are worth your hard-earned money because yeah, I just really don't think that they are where they should be. The fits, the cuts, the quality of fabrics, in my opinion, is just not something that I would want to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on. But let's move on to the Rose bags. And of course, we cannot talk about the Row without mentioning the Margot bag. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail here because I recently talked about and shared my thoughts on the Rose Margot bag. So if you're interested, I will make sure to leave that video linked up here for you. One thing that I always have to mention when it comes to the Margot bag is how much I regret not jumping on the Margot bag when these things used to go on sale. As I mentioned before in this video, I have been following the Row for many years, and I remember the Margot bag used to go on sale at Bergdorf and also at Barney's. It used to go on sale every single season, not only in regular leather, in all the different sizes. Well, back then they didn't have quite as many sizes. I think they had 2 or 3 sizes, and they were mainly larger bags, and these bags used to always go on sale, both in regular leather and exotic skins. I remember at one point I found this incredible matte alligator or crocodile bag for like 50 or 60% off at Barney's, and I didn't buy it. At that point, I really did not have a big collection from the row. It's not a brand that I was extremely familiar with. And I was also at the beginning of my Hermes journey. So I was constantly, saving my money for Hermes bags. And it was pretty much the same price as a Birkin at the time, even though it was an exotic leather. And I felt like, this money could just go towards my next bag at Hermes. So why would I spend it on an up and coming contemporary brand? But at this point, I so wish I had just bought that bag instead. But it is what it is. It's not something that I'm going to be losing sleep over. But the Rome Margot bag is, of course, the Rose tribute to their incredible collection of Hermes bag. They took some of their favorite features of the Birkin and the Kelly bag and they modernized it, which is how the Margot bag was born. And it is an extremely understated, really user-friendly top handle bag, which sadly does not have any sort of fastening on the inside, but it has definitely become the it bag, not only of the season, but I think it has been very hyped for the past couple of years, and it single-handedly started a trend of these larger top handle bags, which, yes, there's nothing new under the sun. The Row did not invent this shape, but they have definitely brought it back into the conversation, which is something that they deserve credit for. At this point, I would personally not buy the Row Margot bag, not because there's anything wrong with it. It is a bag that I looked at several times, not only in exotic leather, but for the past few years, I have been looking at it in different leathers. And I do think that it took the Row a little bit of time to figure out how to perfect this bag, which there's nothing wrong with. I do think that the quality has been increasing over the past couple of years, but at this point, I feel like this bag is just so often discussed and often talked about that I personally would not feel comfortable spending thousands and thousands of dollars on it. But I still admire it from the far. I think it is an incredible workhorse bag, even though it's offered in several different sizes. I still prefer some of the larger sizes. So, if you love the shape, you cannot go wrong with it. But personally, it's just not something that I would be investing in. Another bag that was incredibly hyped, so much so that you could not get your hands on it for quite a few years, is the banana bag, which again started a trend, and it was many brands try to dupe it or at least come out with their own take on it. It is a great bag. I do actually have a banana bag for sale. It's something that I bought in the small size, and I just really don't think that the small banana bag suits me. So if you want to find out more about that, I will make sure to have my video linked up here on my closet clean out, where I share and talk about the banana bag. So if you're interested, if you're a fan of this design, I am trying to rehome the one that I bought, because as much as I like it, unfortunately the small size is just a little bit too small for me. It at this point comes in two different sizes, in a small and a large, and I kind of wish I had gone for the larger size. But that is another iconic bag that I think, if you are looking for a casual, easy, laid back bag, something that goes with anything and everything and really just looks expensive without being able to pinpoint a single logo or any sort of heavily branded detail, that is a good one to have in your collection. And then the last bag that I wanted to talk about here is the Park Tote, which comes again at this point in several different sizes. It is the Rose take on a very traditional oversized leather tote bag. It can be mentioned on the same page with things like the Neverfull or the Saint Louis tote by Goyard, even though those are two bags that are made of canvas, whereas the Park tote is made of leather. But if you are looking for a large, simple, easy grab and go tote bag, the Row has of course got you covered with the Park tote, which at this point comes in several different sizes. My favorite is the extra large size that they're currently doing in a nubuck leather, I believe that's how it's pronounced, which is kind of a suede looking leather. It does have a very soft velvety finish to it, but it's not quite as delicate as suede, but it gives a similar sort of texture to your collection, which I think makes it an amazing layering piece to add some interest to a monochromatic outfit. And they're also doing it in a so-called north-south sort of layout, which makes this bag a little bit more vertically elongated. And usually I'm not a big fan of that particular shape, but I actually think it works beautifully for the park tote. And if you like things along the lines of the Picotin from Hermes, the NS Park Tote from the Row, I think would be a really beautiful understated alternative for you to look into. And my friends, this brings us to the end of today's video discussing the truth about the Row. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you got something out of it. If you did, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. And most importantly, let me know in the comment section what you think about the Row. Do you have any pieces from the brand? Are you looking at any one of their creations? What do you think about their overall ethos, their designs, their marketing strategy or lack of marketing strategy? I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about this brand. And if there are any other brands that you would like me to do a similar deep dive on, let me know in the comment section, because I love doing these videos for you, even though they take quite a bit of time for me to research. But if there are any other brands that you would like to hear my thoughts on, the comment section is of course always open for you. I really appreciate you being here and watching, and I cannot wait to see you back here with a new video really soon.